All right, here we go. Episode 5 of That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. Thanks for listening. If this is your first time listening to us, we're a group of friends who watch anime and talk about manga that we read, and we decided that everybody should get in on a conversation, so we're recording them. I'm Isekai Sensei Sama, aka Brad, and I'm joined in our week ball by Kermit D. Grog,
aka Andrew, that's me,
and Bento Baggins,
Konbanwa minasan,
aka Ben.
You know he's having a good day when he busts the Japanese out.
Well, he does it every time, and we just let him for some reason.
I can't think of another greeting, so it's real easy.
It makes me smile.
So before we jump into it, if you're listening to this and you got some thoughts on things, hit us up on social media. Good Pods is a good place to do that. We are always looking for feedback, and we'd love to hear from you. Just a little bit of news before we jump into our discussion. Andrew attended ZenkaiCon last week, and so if you are listening to this episode because of the plug that he did, hi, welcome.
Ooh, yes, welcome aboard. Somebody told me I was very well-spoken for my Evolution of the Shonen protagonist panel, where I felt like I was a caged beast wandering around like a bad stand-up comic on the stage, standing up at like 8 p.m. So whoever said that, I don't know if you're listening to this, but thank you a lot. So hopefully we can bring you the same level of energy and content to your podcast listening into your ear holes right now.
And just a little news on some of the previous things we've talked about. Soso no Frieren, Volume 3 came out very recently. So if you liked our recommendation of that and you're looking at that, make sure to pick that up. Volume 4 is coming May 17th.
Oh, exciting.
Frieren Beyond Journey's End for anyone who reads it in the official translation.
You can find it both ways.
So good. I just finished that third volume you lent me, Brad, and I'm like so already itching for the next one.
Yeah, it's recommended again right here.
Consistently. Every time I finish one, I go, Brad, that was fantastic. Recommend.
And additionally, something else we talked about in another episode, Spy Family, the anime, is premiering on April 9th. Very soon.
Oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to it. Speaking of my ZenkaiCon experience, when I was wandering the vendor hall, I saw somebody with a very adorable Spy Family print on Friday and essentially just issued like a blood pact agreement of like, I will be back to buy this print. I need it. It's too perfect. Like, people don't know that Spy Family is the best yet, but they'll know.
We definitely recommend the manga, as if you listen to that episode, as you'll know. And we're definitely going to check out the anime. We're going to watch it together, and we'll probably have another update once we watch an episode to share that. So, question for either of you. If you were going to create an anime and you wanted it to be incredibly popular and have like hundreds of episodes over many, many years, what genre would you make it?
It would probably be a deep psychological horror.
Well, maybe I shouldn't have asked Ben that question.
It should be, well, judging by what actually has run for billions and billions of episodes, it should be case closed. I'll just write case closed and become a millionaire.
Yeah. It's definitely the shonen formula seems to be, if you can somehow master the power scaling, the shonen formula seems to be the one that goes.
If you can scratch that itch, again referencing my ZenkaiCon journey, I was shocked at how much Demon Slayer cosplay that I saw, which should tell you that, also from my panel, knowing that Demon Slayer has already sold over 100 million copies, despite it only being around for, 5-6 years maybe? Shonen battlers are doing just fine.
Yeah, that was in fact the softball that I was pitching. I think that there's a very interesting setup that goes into this, because if you look at all of the very most popular anime, especially like from our childhoods, you got your stuff like your Naruto and your Bleach, and then you've got these popular ones today. You've got Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen and My Hero. They're all shonen battlers. It's like sort of the only thing that really catches on. Everything else seems to be somewhat niche.
Yeah. I guess there isn't really like a huge, like, even if it gets pretty big, it's still just kind of like an offshoot of that. Other things can be popular in their space, but it never becomes like the thing.
Right. The shonen,
at least in the West.
Yeah. The shonen battler becomes mainstream so much more than any other genre.
So I guess I'm going to like wander directly into the middle of the conversation, and maybe we'll find our way to another end of it while we're getting there. But something about the structure I've definitely noticed recently in our current generation and like a generation past is like there's always a trio. There's a main character, and then they have two buddies. So, and it's like, I was trying to think, is there one that's kind of the situation before Naruto? Because Naruto is the ultimate, there are 3-man squads everywhere. And then you get that again, Demon Slayer has Tanjiro, and then, this is where I'm all the terrible with the names, you've got the guy with the boar head.
Inosuke.
And then you have, I remember Zenitsu, who is the lightning kid. And like, that is your trio of people training to go in there. In Jujutsu Kaisen, you have, I'm not even going to attempt it, but again, you have little 3-man squads in there. Jujutsu Kaisen even seems more so for Naruto of like, it's a school and there's groups of 3.
Right. You have, Itadori, Fushiguro, and Kugasaki.
She's the redhead.
Your second year students, you got Maki and Inumaki and Panda.
I remember that name.
It's what he is. It's what he does.
And technically Yuta's a second year too, but we don't know him yet. That's a secret we'll save for later.
But again, it's that set of 3. You have this really specific like hierarchy of here are like teachers, and here are this group of people, and here's this group of people.
It's definitely not set in stone. But it definitely comes up a lot. I'm thinking back to like Dragon Ball, which I think is a shonen battler, and you don't really have a set squad so much as people who sort of go in and out.
It's Goku and those around Goku, and also right. I guess Vegeta sometimes.
And there's times when it is 3 of them. If I think about it, that happens enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say they had. I mean, for a while there, they were rocking the 3-man with Krillin and Yamcha.
But that's not like, they weren't like the battle squad. It was like, because it's very much, I know characters have existed before the one I'm about to reference, but it's like Krillin kind of becomes your like JoJo Speedwagon. Here's the guy there to tell you what's going on. And I feel like that person is not in the squad anymore. They are either adjacent or they're the narrator. Mm-hmm. Like that is something in the structure as it kind of has crystallized. Like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z to an extent is like there's definitely a bunch of things in there, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out is like, is Naruto where those start crystallizing more and more? Did that then spread into the current generation, or is there something I'm forgetting that kind of came before that started like building that? Because Dragon Ball definitely has the idea of the structure of, here's your main cast. Oh, here comes the tournament arc. I mean, I guess I don't know enough about like Yu Yu Hakusho to know how much that does or does not fit that.
They did something very... Now, Yu Yu Hakusho, there's another thing that happens in Shonen Battlers where it's like, here's a villain and we beat him up. Now he's on our side. And so...
The villain heel turn is a thing, but I don't know. I'd actually say... I can think of more examples where there aren't 3-man squads than when there are. I haven't observed that as like a trend.
Are they the most... I guess it's just I saw in our like 3 most popular shonen battlers right now that haven't been running... that aren't called One Piece or are also a long-running series, because One Piece definitely does not have that as much, really. Though I could make an argument for Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro, but whatever. But lay it on me.
I think that's what they do, is like the 3-man squad is sort of a minimum. Like that's what gets you enough sort of personal relationships for the main character in order to explore different aspects of like their emotional life. But you can build up from there. You can have people come in and out, but it always has to have like a squad. I can't think of one that is like just the one guy the whole time.
Yeah,
there's some really... of them. There's some of them that are just the one guy for a while. Off the top of my head, Trigun, Vash was like on his own, but then he like had those two girls for a while that were sort of going with him, even though they weren't really doing a whole lot. They were just following him.
That was a more common trope of the earlier age, where you had like your guts. You had your protagonist with who reluctantly accepts his squad.
Right.
You got
He's
guts,
like a traveling party, but now it's like,
because even Dragon Ball, like at the very beginning, Goku was on his own, but then almost immediately meets Bulma, and then Krillin, and like builds the squad immediately. So
and the pig.
Well, he meets Bulma, and then Yamcha, and then
shoot, what's the pig's name?
Oolong.
Kermit doesn't remember any names anytime ever. Yes, Oolong. You got to remember Oolong. He comes fairly early. Like you build this traveling party,
like the tea.
Yes, correct. But I feel like there's like a certain point where authors were like, well, if you have an intentional big cast, everybody can have their favorite pick. Like Naruto kind of started that, and I feel like My Hero exemplified that of like, well, who's your favorite? Who is your top pick? Even though Deku's the main character, everybody has like their student.
Even in Naruto,
character.
Even Naruto, like you had the other squads, and like there were times when he would have a mission with other people from other squads, and like you would get to know them, and you know, obviously Shikamaru's the best, and so like you would explore these other characters. And I think it's almost a way to ensure the longevity of your series, because it gives you other things to explore, you know?
Yeah, like you always have the opportunity to just go, well, this is what our main characters were doing, but what were they doing? But maybe not necessarily like here was the important story they were doing. It's like, hey, let's go spend time with them and help flesh out the universe. It gives you a lot of flexibility to just go, I don't want to write about this week. I'll go write about that. Like to hop to a mostly adjacent series, like JoJo, especially part 4 has that in spades, where it's just like, Araki's just like, the author of JoJo is just like, I don't want to write about Josuke this week. I'll write about Rohan instead. I'll go make Rohan go do something. Like when you're like the singular human that's writing it, it gives you a lot of space where it's just like, I'm not feeling this guy this week. I'll go write about this other person that we can go follow. I'll go follow their storyline, so this other one, our main one, can like kind of sit on the back burner for a little while, get some boiling going before it starts cooking up the next section.
Well, so going along with the cast, and this is we're probably covering a lot of ground that people have already covered, but what do you think are the key elements that make something a shonen battler? What does it need?
So I was actually going to say, I think that the squad nature of it is a very central part of the formula, because, you know, the whole point of these formulas is that it works over and over again.
The squad is a part of it. More important than the squad, maybe, I would say, is you need your protagonist. You need, at minimum, one rival.
Yes, a rival is important.
You need maybe a big bad.
But that obviously, I mean, if we look at all the examples, the big bad changes over and over again.
Multiple times.
Sometimes there's like an end one that you have to work through to the whole time. But like most of them, you deal with one big bad and then go to the next one. And it's generally you move up in power each time. So there's always a new hurdle to overcome.
That's a thought that they're usually like isn't, or they're like, because I always go, oh, the big bad's been set up, and then they get dealt with way sooner than I'm expecting, and then the story keeps rolling. Like
most of the time
the villains are things you run into, but they're not like end points of series. They're not like everything is riding on this one human. Most
of the time it's only like one arc or one season that you have that villain for, and then, you know, sometimes you deal with like the sub boss in a season, and then you deal with the main boss the next one. But yeah, most of the time you move on. I mean, Naruto as an example, I mean, I guess sort of for most of Naruto, there wasn't actually a big bad that they were going after. There's always the Akatsuki were there in the background, and you were like, oh, that's the thing that they have to deal with. And then you finally actually got to that in Shippuden. Like all of the first Naruto, you know, non-Shippuden, just had sort of minor villains the whole time. I guess like
I don't know if I'd call Orochimaru a
but,
minor like he was kind of the big bad before the world started opening up.
Right, but like most of it was sort of just centered around like Naruto's growth. Like they didn't really establish the stakes of the world.
So I think I might have been the one who put this topic on the list. And I had a very particular idea in mind when I put the topic on the list. And the one thing I wanted to get at was there's some big mainstream universal appeal of the character trains, gets stronger, overcomes a challenge, trains, gets stronger, overcomes a challenge. And the stuff we're talking about is kind of like the things that usually work to augment that. Like a rival is a good reason to want to get stronger. A big bad is a good reason to want to get stronger. Moving up a clearly defined hierarchy of Shonen, whatever the other ones were.
I'm going to be the Hokage.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the Hokage.
And there are very clearly defined steps to do that.
Yeah.
And so, very quickly, like if Naruto passes, there's always the tournament. There's always the exam. There's always the battle.
Right. Naruto had stakes.
There's something to overcome.
Yeah, less than the actual like villain. If I think about Bleach, for example, Bleach always had like, there's the thing I have to deal with. The first one was like, oh, Rukia, she's going to get executed. So there's the Soul Society I have to fight against. Oh, now that we've dealt with that, oh, actually, Aizen was the bad one. Oh, but he's going to go away for a while. He's going to be the big bad, but that's way down the road. So in the meantime, let's deal with some other crap, and get stronger. And then we'll get to that point and deal with him.
So have you guys ever heard the term progressive fantasy?
I have.
No.
But why don't you tell Andrew?
Tell me, Kermit.
So the reason I suggested this topic is, as you know, I do another podcast about books.
What?
And this isn't really a good fit for that podcast, but especially in the last, I'd say 10 years or so, a genre has emerged in fantasy and maybe sci-fi to a lesser extent of what they call progressive fantasy. And I see in it a lot of shonen tropes. It's usually like a sword and sorcery style story that features a character across several books, sometimes a squad, and he gets stronger and learns more magic and gets more interesting powers. And you get those little moments with the side character where people are talking about like, oh, did you see that, what's his nuts mastered allomancy and like now he's doing this crazy thing. And it's about what the character can do or did or what challenge he overcame. And it's not so much in the vein of traditional fantasy where it's like, I don't really even know how good of a sword fighter Aragorn is.
Yeah, good point.
I imagine he's a pretty good one because he survives all these battles, but
that's not really the main focal point of his journey.
Yeah. It's not about how much ass he can kick. And now I think it is. I mean, it makes sense that it would be. A lot of these new writers were raised on, their Dragon Ball Z and their Toonami, and they have taken that and brought it into writing. And so I was kind of interested in why that works. And I feel like, and this could be my own bias, I feel like it works a little bit better in the comics than it does in the fantasy books I've read, but I have a very limited sample size there. So,
well, I think that Shonen Battler formula, which is sort of the central point here, is it lends itself to long running series because it lets you do that build up and build up and build up and build up
growth.
Yeah. You can do it for a really long time, assuming that you don't like run out of runway to get up to your big bad. You can do that over and over again. And as we've said, like a lot of the time you can just go to a different runway after you can deal with the first one,
This is a genre, now that you've described it, Ben, that really appeals to me in the vein that Brad loves isekais. Since I was young, am a sucker for, what did you call it?
Progressive fantasy.
Progressive fantasy. Like, even like it's one of the things that I love about video games, of just like, I'm upgrading my character over time. Something is going on that I'm amassing new abilities. I get more dudes. My dudes are stronger. Like in a completely different, not that space of like fighting it all, like until it got depressing when I was in back when I was like in high school. We had to read The Good Earth, which is like the story of like a Chinese like farmer like just barely scraping by, and just slowly, chapter by chapter, it's like, I have a wife and now we can do these things on the farm, and then now we have kids and we can expand a little bit more, and I built this little side area of our house, and like, and then him all the way up to being like a like rich merchant in the city. And then it gets depressing because it kind of sucks if memory serves. Also, it's been like over a decade, but like that book was really satisfying to me because I saw somebody upgrading themselves. Essentially, they were moving and changing up in the world. They were like, and there's just something, I don't know if it's primordial, but just like there's just something really satisfying about that. It's like, oh, I spent the gold and now my house is bigger and it can, it looks like this, or something like that.
I do think it's a little bit maybe more accessible in that it puts off that the journey's over moment. Whereas like a lot of epic fantasy or heroic fantasy is about accomplishing a task, defeating a dark lord or something, and then it's done. And they all get to go back to their normal lives. They get the peace they fought for. But the progressive fantasy exists for the person who was just in it for the thrill of the game. Like, they want to get better. They don't want, the journey doesn't end in a progressive fantasy.
Okay, let me take that concept and spin it in a different direction we're not looking in. So instead of looking at it like just it's the progressiveness, which is really great. I love that sense of growth over time. You said that it lends itself well to long stories. And I think that is something that makes, I mean, comics do it, but very specifically anime and manga, really satisfying, is that they do keep going. You can check in. They become almost like a friend. And battlers are like the best at that because it's not, there are big bads to fight, but that's never the end. And there's just something about being a part of the journey. Like, I've been reading One Piece since I was a teenager. Like, I've been reading it over a decade, and because it keeps going and they keep growing and I keep getting older with it, there's something like meaningful and satisfying. And I think that's why these are so popular. It's not necessarily just the stories going on, but like the world they're building. People can get into these shows and not even finish them and still be fans of characters, of aesthetics from them, of related games. Like, it just makes it this very jump-onable thing because it's always going. And like, do you need the earlier stuff? Maybe. But it's just that constant train of like, oh, I can go back to Naruto, I can go back to One Piece, I can go back to, XYZ. And or Dragon Ball, because I know it's still going. I can check back in with these. There's something nice about checking back in with that and going like, oh, how's Vegeta doing? Like, it lends itself to that level of connection via just spending so much time with them, which is helped along by this progressive fantasy where they're not staying too stagnant. They're still growing and things are changing. It's like, oh, what? Goku can do this now? Like, that's...
So... here's a potentially horrifying thought.
Okay.
Is Harry Potter popular because it's a progressive fantasy?
I don't...
Oh... Well, what? I guess is any long-term book series?
Not necessarily. I think Harry Potter is, but it's right on that edge because it's not so much about the characters learning magic, because the magic in Harry Potter is kind of whatever it needs to be for the thing to happen.
But they do that. They power up each time so they can deal with the new threat.
But it's not as like mechanical as like a Shonen battler. Shonen battlers are very like
there's something
puzzly and mechanical in nature.
There's something satisfying, and I guess I shouldn't say it doesn't.
Which is why I said progressive fantasy and not shonen battle.
I want to take back something I said at the beginning about it not being as good in books. I think that's not fair to say. because I do think there is something that a lot of people really like. It hasn't really been my thing, but the hard magic fantasy kind of goes hand in hand with this, where a very clearly defined magic system where problems can be like puzzle solved logically by the characters. A lot of people find that very rewarding. And
that is very anime.
That's why I love Mashal, because it's not that. It's a subversion of that.
Mashal is just the magic is bullshit.
Yeah.
Whatever. Hey,
yeah, that's exactly
right. And then you
right.
punch it. It's
Because
great, actually,
in
in that
Mashal,
regard.
they keep escalating the magic. They're like, okay, here's magic and it can do all these crazy things. Oh, and also there's a second level and it's super powerful.
But wait a minute,
also,
there's a third level, but also your wand does something.
Right. And then Mashal just like punches him in the face.
right, but that wouldn't be satisfying if you hadn't watched a dozen true things
No,
set
that
up
is true.
exactly like
Yeah.
Which is an interesting point, that there's certain things out there that aren't entertaining in and of themselves. They become entertaining because other things exist.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's a different
That's
episode.
another
Topic.
different topic,
You are opening a can of worms
Yeah.
right now.
Well, and yeah, you know, shonen anime is like a very broad topic by itself that we will probably spawn off other conversations off of this episode.
Yeah.
But I wonder, like the other thing I was going to compare and contrast this to is not just heroic fantasy, because that's one aspect. But what about American comics, where this is one reason I turned to manga and I turned to shonen battlers in specific. I was a big fan of the X-Men. But one of the problems I have with the X-Men is, you know, Gambit's got his power. That's his power. How's he going to use it? You can only really do that so many times.
That's an interesting point, because if I think about DC, Marvel, just sort of like the mainstream comics, especially early on, you know, and like
for the most part, they
60s,
don't
70s, 80s.
grow.
Yeah, they're like, here's a power set. We're going to go against this villain. We're going to use our powers against this villain. And then next time, it's a different villain. Sometimes we'll go back to a villain. Sometimes it'll be a couple in a row. We're dealing with the same villain. But there's not... there's not a lot of growth.
You go back,
that's a good point. Yeah, you kind of check in and it's just like, it's not how have you changed, it's just what are you doing now? Or like the change isn't in their power, but in their like place and their relationships.
well, and it's very much like you go back to the myths these things are based on, like Western comics, very much like they're the Greek gods of the modern age.
Yeah.
But Eastern mythology is very earned. Everything's about working towards a thing. And I think both are good, as we see with like...
You both have their place.
Yeah.
But I think like My Hero Academia is one that kind of symbolizes like the best of both worlds. I joke about My Hero Academia sometimes because like I think the bureaucracy of being a hero is like very uniquely Japanese. But
I mean, that was what Civil War was about. Should heroes have bureaucracy?
the answer was no.
I think the answer is yes.
I mean,
And there's the Civil War, guys. Here it is.
Practically speaking, the answer is yes. But
As
in
much
the
as
Marvel
I-
universe, the answer is no.
As much as I like Captain America, he's wrong.
But yeah, I think that's a very minor part of My Hero Academia, and it just gives me a chuckle. But I like that their power, they train their powers, that their powers consume calories, assuming like they actually go over that at one point. I think the people who make things, she has to consume that many calories or something.
Well, in fat gum.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like it takes physical energy to use their powers, and so they get tired, but they can also train to have more stamina. Whereas in Spider-Man, he gets bit by a spider. He's a big muscly dude, and he's got all the spider powers, and has all the powers
he's kind of done, or at least after the first kind of initial thing. I was thinking of Spider-Verse. Then it's like you kind of just you get your power set.
Well, right. And actually something that we've seen with Western, Spider-Man's a good example. Superman is another example of this, is that we find out at some point that they're always not using their full power, or else they'd like murder people constantly.
Yeah, or they just get random power-ups sometimes.
Just in case anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, at one point, Doc Ock takes over Spider-Man's body and then goes, oh my God, he's so powerful. He was actually holding back this whole time.
That is such an anime revolution, and I love it.
And then
Superior Spider-Man.
Superman is fighting, I believe it's Darkseid, and he's like, finally someone I can use my full power against. It's like living in a world of cardboard. So
that's an interesting thing. That, I never really like thought about that. It's like, like American comics are very just much like, here's your power set out of the box, and anime and manga is just so just like, it's seeing that growth of like Naruto goes from his like first shadow clone to like thousands of them making giant freaking Razengans in the sky that are then shaped like, and seeing that like that's satisfying. That's as satisfying to be freaking leveling up my stats in an RPG and then like crushing things. Like there's just something.
Well, and I would argue it's much more satisfying to watch Naruto crush that guy than it would be to watch a guy who just got that power to crush that guy.
And actually, so here's a really good juxtaposition. So if you want to talk about like, oh, there's examples in Western media where, you know, the person gains new powers over time. I have a really good example of this, and it's a counterpoint to that argument, which is Smallville. In Smallville, you've got, you know, young Clark Kent to be Superman, and instead of like growing, he discovers his powers. The power basically manifests itself, and then he has to learn how to control it. Instead of working towards it, it just appears.
It's a thing to be dealt with instead of a reward.
Right.
That's not as like I guess like story-wise that can be satisfying, but I guess because I'm like big into like my brain set right now is thinking about, you know, this progressive fantasy, the shonen battler of that idea of that.
I'd
that
say
growth.
The closest thing in Western, like purely Western stuff, you know, before the anime boom of the late 90s, early 2000s, was like a Rocky movie, a sports thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, well, and that's a reason I think like Rocky has a lot of crossover appeal. People who don't normally like sports movies like Rocky because we can all relate to a guy who works hard to achieve a thing. And even if we don't want to be boxers ourselves or we don't know anything about boxing, we can relate to that human story. You can see him sweat. You can see him, you know, go through some trouble.
It's definitely interesting the way that these different ways of approaching power sort of appeal to different aspects of, you know, the human mindset. As Andrew alluded to earlier, I very much enjoy Isekai, and a trope of Isekai, although not across the board, is that the person goes to the other world and immediately has some kind of cheat ability that puts them above basically everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of falls into what we're talking about with Western media, where you basically have the power set already, and then you sort of discover new and interesting ways to use it rather than growing it.
Yeah, because the most interesting thing about a Western superhero is, okay, this guy's a god. Now what does he do?
Right.
You want to see him help people and fight crime. That's the satisfying part, is like he's not using his powers for evil, but another person who gets a similar thing does.
Mm-hmm.
Man, now you got me just really thinking about Western things where they get powers over time, and then Steven Universe jumped to my mind, the cartoon, but that's kind of some of the Smallville situation where it's like he slowly kind of discovers and unlocks his powers, but it's all just sort of through it's like he's technically, like he is growing throughout the season, and that's partially why he's getting his powers, because they're emotionally based, but they always show up like unexpectedly, and sometimes a power will appear and then disappear for a couple episodes, and he's like, well, why can't I do this anymore? Like, it's not just, oh, I have this power now, but like that is definitely an example, and Steven Universe is very much a show inspired in some part by anime, where his power set in the beginning and his power set at the end are drastically different.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Is Steven Universe pretty heavily influenced by magical girl stuff?
Yes, it's by anime in general. It is very much on its sleeve.
I think there's an important point there, because, you know, as we've been talking about this, it just in my mind, it almost feels like we're ragging on that Western way of doing it, but it really, I don't, it's just a different way to approach it.
But it's sorry, you go, Ben.
I was going to say, no, I legitimately have, trust me, I'm moving. I've found them boxes and boxes and boxes of Western comics.
Right. And as I said, Isekai does that a lot, and I very much enjoy that.
I just got tired of it. I didn't even know I'd gotten tired of it until I saw Dragon Ball Z, my first like shonen battler, and I was like,
oh yeah, because if that's if you consume one of anything forever, it's gonna get monotonous.
Yeah,
except for Isekai.
That's for you though. Let's not be.
But I love the X-Men. I love that it's a soap opera. I love that it's about teenagers with superpower problems and everything like that.
Well, and that's I wanted to bring that up. Something that happens with that, if you start with a base set of powers, and maybe you'll explore like new and interesting things you can do with it. But what you can do within that is explore the human side of it, the emotional side.
The powers exist to create drama.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a framework to build off of.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, the Shonen Battler is also that, but you're leaning more towards the growth aspect of it rather than the sort of in-between part. Like what happens after the battle? How do they deal with the aftermath? It's more like, oh, we're building up to the battle and now we've accomplished it. And,
Well, and I think that's why I've struggled with it in books a little bit, because I think my expectations are different when I go into a fantasy novel or a fantasy series. I'm expecting more character interaction, more character building, more drama. And the author and the audience are interested in exploring the power scaling, the training, the puzzle solving, the more shonen aspect, the progressive aspect. They're interested in the progress, and that's just not the mindset I went into a book with. But because of whatever reason, I came to anime as this weird exotic thing. Maybe my mind was more open to it. I was like, oh, this is different. I'll just see how far the rabbit hole goes.
I just thought of a show. I'm racking my brain for other cartoons that I've watched that are like, because a bunch of them, as we've talked about, and I think episodes prior, like, are very much inspired by anime now. And I'm like, what is one where a character does grow over time in a shonen way, that they get new powers, and it's not like Steven Universe where it's like he's technically getting them because he's getting better, but it's always the point of then an episode where he has to go through some like emotional trauma or something to get to them, like where it's literally just over time this character gets new abilities and they figure them out better and they get stronger in a very clear way. And neither of you have seen it, which makes it a difficult talking point, so I'll do my best to sell it, but it is Disney's Owl House, where in the beginning, it is also an isekai because a person from Earth goes to this crazy other, like, demon magic world. And in the beginning, because she's just a regular human, she can't do magic. And then she figures out that she can write the glyphs that the witches are using to cast magic, and then use those to cast magic. And then she learns more of the different types of sigil. Like, over time, she's like, okay, I've got like fire and wind, and then she'll get a new sigil. Or she'll figure out like, oh, if I draw them at different sizes, that can change their properties or stuff like that. Or it's like, oh, if I can combine them. And like, there's a very clear shonen-y progression, this progressive fantasy of the character getting notably stronger and her abilities increasing, but from that base of like, I have to write these down. I have this specific thing that is, that's one we didn't get into. This ability that is specific to me has to grow and get stronger. Mm-hmm. And now that I've said that, that's definitely a thing in these animes where you have the squad or the team or the crew or whatever. It's just like, you don't just get one character you get to watch grow and improve. You get dozens sometimes of characters that you can see. Like, there was that one episode later in My Hero Academia where you just get a moment where like everybody shows off the cool new thing their powers can do now. Yeah. And like, that is just freaking candy for my brain. I love that because it's like, what cool new idea did you think about using this as your like theme?
Yeah, it's like almost the satisfaction of watching somebody master a craft.
Yes,
it doesn't have to be.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be fighting. It doesn't have to be violent. It can be like, I learned about sigils. I learned how to write them different.
We're literally reading a manga and loving right now about why do I never have the names in my brain that I
Akane Banashi?
Yes. What's the act called though?
Rakugo.
Like, it's literally just like theatrical storytelling, But if you present it well, like seeing her grow and like learn new concepts. I mean, I'm coming back. It's like, it's why I love freaking sports anime. It's why I like freaking Ice Shield 21 is one of my favorite manga ever, and why I own all like, 40 some volumes that now currently sit on my shelf, because that is where I get to see an entire team of humans constantly learning new things and growing and gaining new techniques and just straight up getting stronger as well. And it's just catnip for my brain.
That's definitely like we've butted heads on that.
Exactly.
As like the point of like contention between like isekai versus shonen.
Yes, because you have, it's like, I want the power now, and it's like I need the ride. I want to get to the point where people crush other people, but I want to be there in the beginning where they can't, or they have a hard time with it. It's the same thing in like a video game. It's like, I'm playing Batman. It's like, in the beginning, 3 thugs can maybe be kind of problematic, and by the end of the game, I'm like dispatching all sorts of like dozens and dozens of thugs. I'm like flying around. I'm a cool dude. Like I've had that sense of progression.
He says because he's currently playing it.
I mean, that was the exact example, but there's like a lot of other things where it's just that concept of the beginning and the end, or even just the beginning and later, where it's just like,
so
this used to trouble me and now it doesn't. It's that feeling, because it's like, I can't always get that progression out of my own life, so seeing it somewhere else is satisfying.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, to me, like a dollar earned versus a dollar given. Like,
oh, certainly. Yeah.
Like, I don't make a lot of money on my podcasting career, but whenever I make $1 from the podcast, it feels like so much better than getting my paycheck every week. I
work for both of those things.
I know I work for both of those things, but one of them feels like I built this one from the ground up. Like, the podcast is mine. Like, this dollar does not exist without me.
Oh, I
don't feel the same way about my job, because I'm replaceable, and I should be. They're a company. They should not. It would be a huge risk to have everything rely on me. What if I get hit by a bus?
Yeah.
But it's just, for me personally, much more satisfying when the side project is
because it's your baby and you're watching it progress. Us recording this very podcast, every week we have some new technique or idea that we're trying to make it better, and that's satisfying. And hopefully you as the listener are hearing this, that I've now an audio shield to deflect the other microphones from my immense microphone powers.
When will Shonen Jump get the first podcasting manga?
Oh my god.
Well, hey, they already made a manga about making manga. They're making a manga about Rakugo, which is performance. I'm gonna be the best podcaster ever.
See, you want to write the Isekai Sensei Sama story. I want to write a Shonen Battle-esque manga about podcasting, where there's a clearly defined hierarchy of podcasters, and there's a podcast tournament.
Gosh, how do you fight though? Do you each record an episode with like a live audience?
Hold on. Is Joe Rogan the final boss?
Oh my gosh!
It's all coming together. It just falls into place.
And they slowly build a network, and then they have friends, and then their friends start making shows, and then those grow. Like, yes, this is it. This is the reason we did this episode, to figure out this idea to make the Shonen Battler for podcasts.
Well, because they do have podcast awards, so you do go up against other podcasters in your category.
We just need to make up some like
and then
whatever
styles.
like the hierarchy.
There's styles of podcasting.
Exactly.
There's
so then you can have a friend. Here's the radio show. Here's like the news one. Here's the like bullshit pop culture one. Like,
and like there's one where like we're doing like a from scratch episode. We don't really know what we're gonna say, and then like I borrow the techniques from the fiction podcast and the news podcast.
Yes, Ben, you're alchemizing something special here. Oh my gosh.
Okay. All right.
I think this conversation's done. I think we've hit where we needed to be.
In conclusion, do you think that the growth aspect of a shonen battler is sort of the core of the formula?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. As somebody who attempted to read after being really excited about it from other things, Fist of the North Star, and how much growth just wasn't happening and that he was already complete out of the box, I got bored like 2.5 books in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's honestly the common denominator of a lot of Shonen Jump manga, is they can range pretty widely in genre, from like fantasy to sci-fi to sports.
Yeah.
But they all have that, or even to Rakugo. But
And I think it appeals to a very wide audience because, you know, as much as I enjoy Isekai and I love the escapism of that sort of instant power and everything, I also really enjoy Shonen Battlers, and I like that progression, assuming it isn't like ridiculously drawn out.
Well, and
but
I think most people live their life that way.
Right.
Like most of us are probably trying to get better at something.
Well, and that's sort of why I like the escapism of the Isekai, because you get to shortcut that.
And that's totally valid.
Yeah. Well, I think there's probably more to unpack here.
Yeah, I think we've hit a good. I think we've hit a good getting off point.
Yeah.
I've got some things to chew on.
At some point, we're gonna have to have a follow-up episode that just sort of touches on a lot of the points of previous episodes that we've left hanging. And unfortunately, I think this is going to be one of those. Yeah. Hey, if you like this conversation, leave a comment and tell us what you think about it.
Yeah, let us know what direction you'd like us to go.
Share your thoughts. What's a thing of the Shonen Battler structure that you've noticed and want to have explored?
Oh my God, we're such hacks.
No.
What do you mean? We're genuinely imploring the audience to go, hey, give us a thing to think about. It's fun to think about things.
Obviously, you need to like, comment, subscribe, give us a 5-star review on iTunes. But
ring the bell.
Yeah, after you do that, I genuinely actually do want to know your thoughts, because this is something I have puzzled over for a long time. I want to know your thoughts if you're a shonen manga fan, a sports manga fan, or a progressive fantasy fan. If you're a big like Brandon Sanderson person,
Brando Sando.
I'm interested in all that stuff because it's obviously hugely popular and it's a big part of society and a lot of people relate to it. And I think it's a fun conversation.
Well, and I'll tell you what, stay tuned to the end of the podcast to find out how leaving a comment could be a boon in your favor.
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh my God.
You know, guys, I think that people who end up in another world should really have it really easy by this point. Because Isekai has such a solid formula at its base that if you get isekai'd, you should really just know immediately what you need to do. It's so popular and prevalent that there's really no reason that anybody should end up in another world and be like, oh, what's going on? What am I gonna do? How am I gonna survive?
But what if you get isekai as like a spider or a disease? Isn't there one where it's a disease?
Or some sort of slime.
Or that time where everything is figured out by baseball. What if you're a basketball player and you get reincarnated in the world where everything's baseball?
You're just describing the plot of Space Jam.
This is Bobby Bonilla.
Bobby Bonilla.
Thank you. As soon as I was just like, I'm going to say Bobby Bonilla, and Ben's going to pop so hard.
Oh, God.
Well, I mean, even in the case of being a spider, I think, you have your otherworldly tropes. You should be able to go, okay, if I can just keep my head down and do these things, I'll find a way to get through this because I'm not surprised. I know how this works. It's a formula. You've got your base, It's the thing that makes isekai so popular is that it's so approachable because it's something that you already know. I talked about this on a previous episode. You take a Japanese person and you put them in another world and you start to tell a story about that world. You don't have to explain the Japanese school system or how the trains run on time or the Japanese government. That person already has all that knowledge. The person reading it already has that knowledge. We can skip all that. I think that formulas, in the same way that a Shonen Battler formula lets people sort of shortcut into a story and say, oh, this is going to sort of progress in this direction because that's how this formula works. And obviously you can play with those formulas sometimes. Maybe you're a spider. Maybe you're a slime.
Maybe you play baseball.
Maybe love is war. Oh, no, wait, that's a different one. That's not an isekai.
Another word where baseball is war.
But yeah, so it's something that lets the reader or watcher, the consumer of that media, not have to learn a whole bunch of things. They can work with the knowledge that they already have.
Maybe you're a copy editor in a world where everything is decided by the number of punctuation mistakes. OC, please don't steal.
Where did that come from?
Oh, that's a DeviantArt thing.
Wait,
Really?
the phrase OC don't steal?
No. Oh, yeah.
Copy editor.
Yeah.
My copy editor don't steal.
His idea.
I think something that every isekai has, the thing that sort of makes the formula is, like I said, you take the person from a world, they already know these things about the world, you put them in another world. Every isekai has that. I mean, I'm Isekai Sensei-sama. I can't think of one that isn't like that. There's ones where the protagonist loses their memory, but they still have basic world knowledge from their previous world. It's like the central trope of an isekai. And then generally, the next step of that is they somehow have a leg up on everybody else in the universe because of that knowledge. Now, people play with that trope a lot where you have they become a slave, or, they get betrayed, or whatever is going on, and they have to sort of build up from there. But they still have their other world knowledge that makes them have a leg up. They have that superior knowledge from a modern world.
They have a boon in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's kind of like the what if scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
What if I went back in time with all my modern knowledge?
In another world with my cell phone.
It's almost an Evil Dead kind of thing going on there.
Evil Dead. Ash is very much isekai protagonist.
Except it's the same world. It's just back in time, but yeah. As we've established, you have to go to another world. It has to be, a different
What if
dimension.
you don't know it's the same dimension until much later, like Planet of the Apes?
I mean, technically speaking, it's not an isekai, but you also have technically versus the feeling
in the spirit of
the vibe.
The vibe. You got that isekai vibe check.
That's what you should call this segment.
That's what when the music starts up, that's isekai vibe.
But the thing, I think the reason why isekai is so popular now, that you've got two sort of core tenets of the popularity of isekai. One, the main one being the escapism of it. This idea of I live my mundane life in this world, this modern world that doesn't care about me at all. And then I'm suddenly transported to a world where I'm so powerful and everything. It's that escapism.
And that the world then, you matter the most because the world's going to end up revolving around
basically.
you.
Yeah, most of them.
Because of that boon, that leg up.
And I think that the second part is the formula of the isekai, the thing that makes it very approachable, very easy to get into. I mean, my reading list is currently over 700.
Man knows his stuff.
That's because it's so easy to read. There's not a ton of thinking involved most of the time. It's just consuming. So
turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream. It is all isekai.
I do feel like the selling points of isekai are also the criticisms of isekai.
Oh,
yeah.
Certainly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the best thing is kind of the worst thing.
If this is what you want, this is what you will get.
Yeah.
And if it's not, you will not like it. Which I guess could describe anything, but isekai more so.
Yeah. Yeah. Isekai, I think, is the sushi of the media world.
Paint this picture for me,
because
Brad.
people who like it really, really like it. and people who don't like it hate it.
Yeah, I think
It's not for everybody.
one of the
But
challenges.
it should be.
No.
There are isekai I like,
Yeah.
and I like that baseball one.
I need to catch up on that. I'm sure there's been 3 chapters since I last read it 6 months ago.
But one of the challenges with isekai is kind of it just being pure wish fulfillment. Like it, and I don't know. Would you say that is that an unfair thing to say about isekai? That it's
No,
pure?
definitely not. The best isekais do not rely on the wish fulfillment aspect of it. There's certainly some really good isekai that do you immediately have this crazy power, but the thing that they do is they don't dwell on that. They move on and they go, okay, we're going to explore the world. We're going to explore relationships. They don't make that the central part of it. It's just a thing that the main character has, and it lets them go throughout the world and explore the rest of it. However, there are a lot of pure escapist ones. Generally, those are the ones with harems in them. And what that is doing is saying, hey, reader, we know you have a shitty life. You go to your office job, 9 to 5, and you have nothing going on. Well, guess what? Read this and get the warm fuzzies, because this guy, he's just like you, and he came into this power, and now all these girls love him. Isn't that great? Think about how great that is. And you know what? That's pretty great. I think it's pretty great. And it's not literary masterpieces. It's the fried chicken of the manga world.
Sometimes you're just hungry and this is what you want to eat.
Right.
There's a space for comfort food.
It's comfort food.
Yeah.
It's just you shove it in your eye holes.
Shove it in your face hole and slam it.
I'm going to make a reference that none of our listeners are going to get. That is going to age me rapidly.
Nice.
Is there like a Beverly Hillbillies of isekai? Where they hear me out.
I'm so curious where you're going for with this.
I don't know where we're going with this.
There's the Beverly Hillbillies. Like one day, Jed's out trying to shoot a rabbit.
Yeah.
And he shoots the hill and he strikes oil, and his life changes overnight.
Are you really not going to do the theme song?
I don't remember it. You can edit
Are you
it
really
in.
not going to do the Weird Al parody song about it?
I never heard that.
Oh, you were missing out.
Okay, edit both of those in, and then, but like they get all the money, and their life changes overnight, and they get this fancy mansion and these fancy cars. But now they have like they're fish out of water in this crazy world.
I think that's sort of like the reverse though, because they keep their hillbilly ways but are put in this fancy environment, and so the humor of that and the story of that is the juxtaposition of, oh, look at these crazy hillbillies trying to like you do the same hillbilly stuff in this fancy environment, whereas with an isekai it's generally like the person is sort of acclimating to the world.
They're just perfectly suited to the world they're in.
Right.
Yeah.
I see.
It's not that they just don't have a lot of money and can just sort of shape reality around them.
Yeah, because I don't know. I think
Except
sometimes
for that one isekai where the guy always has the right amount of change in his pocket for whatever he needs.
Wait, is that real?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I kind of love that.
Yeah, that's
Man will never go to leave a vending machine hungry.
I don't know the name of it off the top of my head
okay.
though, so
Put it in the show
I
notes.
don't recommend it though. It's not very good. But
I just like that as a power, because now how does that power grow and expand and Shonen Badler? So it's got
doesn't.
the exact amount of change.
it does not
Then
grow
you're not
at
thinking
all.
creatively enough. That's the joy. It's like, how is this power going to expand? I don't know. They'll figure out a way. It'll
He
be cool.
has the exact right change that he can whip right at the villain at this perfect speed to knock him out.
he climbs a very tall building above the villain, purchases something really expensive, and his pants fill with this heavy money, and then they fall off and crush the villain.
I thought you were just going to say he drops a penny off the Empire State Building.
Well, and that's what I was hoping you were going for, so I could go, actually, a penny cannot reach a velocity fast enough falling off the Empire State Building in order to kill someone.
Yeah, but did they test that with like a roll of pennies?
No. Which is why I was disappointed with Ben's example.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. I don't know. I think sometimes the criticism isekai gets, and like some of my hesitation at embracing it as a genre has been around, it feels like the person buying lottery tickets when they really need to be like studying or something.
Oh,
Spending
definitely.
that money on their living situation.
Yeah.
So the thing with isekai is like there's so much of it that like all of the criticisms of isekai are valid, but also not valid. Like you can basically find an example and counterpoint to every single problem with isekai. Like,
So of the 700 you're currently reading,
not all of them are isekai, but yeah, probably
Most of them are.
90%.
how many fall into that? Like, are all of them fun for you? I mean, at this point, it is your brand, so you have to.
As much as as much trash as I consume, like I don't read ones that I don't like. There's a couple of them that are right on the cusp that I just sort of hang on to because I'm like, I liked a little bit of this at one point. Let's see if we can get back to that. But for the most part, I do enjoy all of them. I wouldn't recommend most of them, but I do enjoy them.
I have that with cheesy horror movies and stuff.
Yeah. This is a similar thing.
Okay, so I imagine like the wish fulfillment hooks you. What makes you stay? Is it just wish fulfillment all the time, or does the story evolve?
There's enough different series that like, if you want wish fulfillment, you can go to this series and get your wish fulfillment. If you want growth, there's isekai that are basically shonen battlers. So like you can, isekai is more of a format than it is a genre.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like with the baseball one, like the guy's really good at baseball. He gets brought into a world where people play baseball games instead of having wars.
Right.
And that's the hook. Wouldn't it be cool to be like the most important guy in the world? But then the reason you stay is like, he's got to build a team. He's got to teach this girl how to pitch. He's got to figure out who to run.
And that is the thing. All of the best ones, all the ones that I would recommend to someone have something beyond, here's a standard isekai where someone gets some amazing powers. There's some really good ones out there where they start with a cheat power and they're like crazy good from the beginning, but there's always something more to it that gives it substance beyond that. The amazing power right away is just a shortcut to get you into the story. And then you explore the world and the relationships within that, which I think is sort of what we come back to with all of these, whether it's the Western comic book with like an X-Men or a shonen battler or these isekais, is that the best ones all explore the world and the characters and the relationships of the characters on top of whatever crazy powers are happening in battles and villains and all that. Like those are all just a base for a setting with which to explore all the facets of the world.
Yeah, I think that's probably why the harem ones, I don't know, I guess.
I can't think of a single harem one that I would actually recommend to someone.
I feel like that would get tiring after a while because I feel like you just keep seeing the same tropes over and over again.
For the most part, yeah. They're really, the harem ones are almost specifically escapism. I shouldn't say that. There's one that I can think of that's actually like funny and like, it's not an isekai though, but it's,
well, there you go.
It's funny and heartwarming, and like the harem stuff is, like I was saying, is just a base with which you then explore all this other stuff. But most of the harem ones, if the story is good in any way, the harem stuff is sort of just like an aside to it. It's a way to get characters in there and like have them be in situations. It isn't sort of the central point. The ones where the harem is a central point, literally just escapism. It might as well be softcore porn. Some of them are. I mean,
yeah. So the bare minimum of an isekai formula is a person is transported into a world they are specifically suited for.
I can't say that though, because
I feel the formula is just they're transported to another world and they have some sort of boon, let it be given or from their past life, that gives them an edge over everybody else in that world to succeed.
Because there's plenty of them where they go to that other world and stuff does not work out. Like they got to deal with stuff. They're not meant for that world. It either becomes like a revenge fantasy or, you know, the struggle, disaster porn kind of stuff. Like they're not all situated as like this person's the best, you know? There's one I can think of specifically where the first 2 or 3 chapters, he just is continually isekai'd. He's isekai'd to like 3 or 4 worlds in a row.
Oh my
because
gosh.
stuff keeps going wrong. And each time it happens, he gains a new power. But then like he ends up going back to the original world that he was summoned from. And there, like, they think that he's like crappy because he came so late, but it just ended up that he went to multiple other worlds and like he hides his powers and stuff. It's crazy, but that's sort of a good example of like, you can take this base of person goes to another world and just do the most ridiculous stuff with it, you know, and just because so many of them, the majority of them are very standard formulaic series doesn't mean that you can't do new and interesting things with it. That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime is a nation building manga. Like he's building a nation of monsters. Like, sure, he's like super overpowered and awesome and everybody loves him, but like there's a whole bunch of like diplomacy and stuff he's got to deal with, especially now, you know, later into the series. Like he's dealing with all these other nations and how they don't want a nation of monsters and all this stuff. So like you can really build off of it in so many ways. And that's why isekai's the best.
So would you say...
Don't quit your day job, buddy.
Would you say that a shonen battle manga is like playing a video game, like a RPG, and then an isekai is like playing that same video game, but with cheat codes on?
Sometimes.
An experience booster.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I want to play Final Fantasy VII, but I really hate how it takes a really long time and like you got to grind a whole bunch. So I'm going to stick in the Game Shark and I'm going to, you know, bump my level up really high and
give Cloud a big head,
get all these materia and everything. And I'm just going to plow through this because I just care about the story. I don't care about these grind gameplay loops, right?
You just want to get big, huge.
I just want Tifa to be my girlfriend.
There's
Aerith.
other
Replay
games
can't
for
help
that.
with that one, Ben. Sorry. Can't rewrite the code that much. So when you were talking about the reincarnated as a slime, but it's like you've got great power and it's more about the diplomacy than the actual just like I can crush everything. Mm-hmm. It reminded me of the manga that we wanted to suggest today, which is Jujutsu Kaisen. One of the major characters in it, Gojo, who is the teacher, has a power that is essentially so powerful that he's like, I could crush everybody, but that wouldn't actually solve the problems that I want to solve. So he has to do it more diplomatically. Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought about. So let's use that to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen.
Is it time for Manga Book Club?
Manga Book Club.
Yeah. In fact, that is what we are recommending, that everybody immediately drop what they're doing and go watch Jujutsu Kaisen, because it is one of the best anime maybe ever.
It's my favorite shonen battler.
Like top 5, definitely.
Yes, I would say top 5. I don't think I could say best of all time yet, but I really like it a lot.
It's so interesting because, you know, we talked a lot about this shonen battle stuff.
Yeah.
And like it does that. It has those tropes
in spades.
But it does everything so well. It's like if you've ever watched someone do a high dive, you know, a normal person who's pretty good at swimming and diving, they do a high dive and they get that
impressive.
little splash.
Yeah.
But then you watch the person in the Olympics do it and they just slide into the water.
Their bodies gyrate in unreal ways. And
Right.
you're like, how did you do that?
And then there's no splash. And that's exactly what Jujutsu Kaisen is. It does the shonen battle manga with no splash.
So so for people who don't know what it is, because I remember before we watched it, the name sounds very generic.
Yes.
So let's try to paint a little bit of a picture.
Okay. So you have your main character, Yuji Itadori.
Yes.
Itadori Yuji. Sorry.
Itadori is his family name, isn't it?
Right. So I got to say it the right way. Itadori Yuji. And he is an outlier as a human. As a human being, he is ridiculous. He's in high school, and for whatever reason, they never really explain it, he is just the most athletic person on the planet. I think it's in the first episode. He's like, I don't want to do sports. He's at school. He's like, I don't want to do sports. And his coach is like, listen, let's do shot put. If I beat you, you have to do some sport. And Yuji's like, okay, we can do that. And so his teacher goes up and he throws the thing, the whatever that you call that, the shot
put.
Yeah, the shot put that they're throwing for shot put.
He throws it and it goes like really far. And he's like, oh, I'm so great. You know, he's never going to beat that. And then Yuji comes up and he grabs it and basically throws it like a baseball, like 5 times the world record.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, what the? And he's like, bye.
Yeah.
And they don't like talk about that at all. But
well, I mean, Yuji's grandfather's like, I got to tell you about your parents, but maybe later.
Oh, that's right.
Sure
I
would be
forgot
a dick
about that.
move to die right now.
And then he does.
So Yuji's all alone. His grandpa just died, and he's like, I don't know what's going to happen. Turns out that in this world, there's all of these things that we might call demons that are in this world. They're called curses. And they're basically an amalgamation of negative energy, like negative human emotions. And depending on how negative the emotions and how long it's been festering and all that, these curses, these monsters, get more powerful. Now, normal people can't see these things.
But they can be affected by them.
But they can definitely be affected by them. If one touches you, you can sort of feel it. Depending on what it does, it can literally just like murder you. And so there are people who can see these, and they're called curse users. And they have the ability, at least most of them, have the ability to use cursed energy in order to fight these things. And so Yuji's grandpa dies. He's like, what am I going to do? And then he goes back to school.
I think this is all episode 1.
God, is it?
Yeah, it's been
all
a
in
while.
episode 1. So
I was going to paint a more broad picture, but I guess if you just want to paint episode 1, we can do that.
he's in a club at his high school with these 2 other people who aren't that important to the story, but it's important for the setup. And they're like, are they like a mystery club or something like that?
They're like a paranormal research
club.
club.
It's like mob.
And so they find this artifact, right? They find it in the school. It's on school grounds, but it's like this. It's wrapped up in this parchment that has all kinds of writing on it. And they're like, "Oh, this is super creepy. We're gonna come back to the school at night and we're gonna unwrap it. It's gonna be super creepy.
It'd be super spooky, guys."
Because they're like, well,
like genuinely, that's what they're doing.
obviously,
Actually,
occult stuff isn't real, right? So they go and they unwrap this. Yuji's not here at this point. By unwrapping this thing, they attract all these curses to them. And so Yuji shows up just as they're being like viciously attacked by all these things. Turns out Yuji can see them. Turns out Yuji can be a curse user.
When Yuji showed up with a mysterious young man who was also looking for the thing.
Oh, that's right. Fushiguro's there.
I forgot that. It's been a hot minute.
So it turns out that this artifact that they unwrapped is a finger that came from the most powerful cursed
Demon guy.
Yeah, like ever, called Sukuna. And while they're fighting this curse, trying to save their friend, Yuji ends up eating this finger, which is as gross as it sounds.
Yes.
I eat chicken fingers.
They're usually like fried and deboned. There's not usually a nail involved.
If you fried Sukuna's finger, I'd eat it.
I don't doubt that.
So it turns out that eating this finger puts Sukuna's spirit inside Yuji, which to an extent lets Sukuna take over his body, which is not good because he's the most powerful. I mean, at this point, he's an evil spirit, but he's the most powerful one basically ever, and that would be bad. And this is when Gojo shows up.
Yes.
And Gojo is like, hey, guess what? You're super powerful. I'm more powerful.
Also, everybody wants you dead.
Turns out Yuji can actually somewhat control the ability to let Sukuna out. And so Gojo's like, hey, I need to talk to him for a couple minutes. Can you let him out? 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. And then take back over. And so Gojo kicks his butt and is like, yep, I just need to confirm that. And then we move on. Anybody else want to?
Well, no, because I was gonna just paint this in broad strokes. So basically, there's a school where they train jujutsu users. It's very Naruto, but like everything's better. There's the 3-man squad. You got your main character who's like a little bit more lively and friendly, who's your Yuji or your Naruto. You've got your dark brooding one, which is your Sasuke or your Fushiguro. But he's like way better than Sasuke because he's broody, but like you kind of get it, and also he's cool.
I do.
And then you get the girl who is Sakura, or we remembered her name then, didn't we?
Kugisaki.
She uses like she's got like the voodoo doll and the hammer with the nails, and she's
very
like
witchy. She's much cooler than Sakura.
Again, also cooler.
I mean,
Gojo,
like
cooler than
most people are
Kakashi,
cooler than
who's cool. Like when we were watching it, it's like this is all very Naruto, but everything is just like you learned all the foibles on Naruto. Freaking Sukuna inside Yuji is very Naruto with Kyuubi. Like it's it's just like there's just something about it that it's just like, hey, this is familiar and I dig it, but they're just doing it cooler and better and faster.
There's a very important story point that I need to bring up, which is that the cursed user community, like the heads of that community, think that Yuji should be executed.
Yeah.
Because he's got.
I think that everybody should be executed.
Yeah, they bring that up a lot.
Well, it just happens to be in the stories that we hear about.
And
it's
basically only because of Gojo that they don't. Because Gojo's like, no, you're not gonna.
Literally one of the strongest, like literally at a point where, which is why I love Gojo. He's like, I could literally kill the entire higher ups of this society, but it would do nothing but create more violence. So instead I am teaching the new generation.
Gojo is perhaps the least Japanese character to ever appear in an anime.
And that's why he rules.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of why Jujutsu Kaisen gets such a high recommendation from me, as it's one of the few anime that genuinely makes me laugh.
Yes, it's since on top of all this like darkness and cool shonen combat-y stuff and like neat ideas, it is genuinely really funny at moments, and it in a way that it really knows what it's doing.
It's like a horror comedy action.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing that the thing that makes it stand out so much, because it has all of the formulaic things of the shonen battler, but it does them all so well, and then builds on top of that with the comedy, with the relationships that these people form, the exploration of the world that you're in, all of the different things that you're like, okay, shonen battler, but what else is there? All of the other things it does almost perfectly.
It's got a big, now that I think about both of them, One Piece vibe, in that you get little pieces of the world as it's going on, but you get the sense that the author has figured out a lot more of the world than you're getting to see in those little moments. But there's just certain times you get this sense of like there's more going on under the hood than you can see right now. And then they'll pick on that later and go, oh yeah, remember when I set this thing up kind of in the background? Now we're doing important stuff with this now.
There's a really interesting mechanic here that sort of is almost a satire of a shonen battler.
Yes.
Which is,
I know what you're talking about.
When a curse user explains their technique to the person they're fighting, it makes the technique stronger.
I love that
which
so
is
much.
So interesting, because they always do that in a shonen battler. They're like, they yell their technique as they're using it, or they stand there and explain what it's going to do, or after they do it, they explain what it's going to do.
Why would you ever do that?
It's like, you're fighting this person to the death. Why are you explaining all this stuff? But in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, there's a point to it.
I know this is manga book club. I haven't read the manga. So
I think I'm the only one that has, and even I'm not fully caught up, but I'm a really good chunk into it.
We are now recommending manga and anime.
Yeah.
You'll have to tell me if this is more a thing in the anime than it is in the manga, but going along with they have a reason for explaining it, and it's just such a good fit. Jujutsu Kaisen is like perhaps the most comfortable in its skin of any shonen battler. It's never like apologizing for the weirdness. It's
No.
never stopping cold to explain rules and bureaucracies. There are rules.
moments of that. There are moments where it's like, here is this thing of the world.
Generally, they fit it in where it makes sense.
Yeah.
It fits in naturally. They managed to make it part of this, like, part of the narrative.
Right.
It's not just stopping to be like, okay, now here's a Chunin exam. I know you've lived your entire life in a ninja village and you've been going to ninja elementary school for this exact purpose. Let me explain to you what a Chunin exam is.
Well, so there is one thing about that irks me, but it's definitely in universe, is that like Yuji learns about all these things as we do. He's
a
the person,
very good
he's our
focal point to learn things.
He's our fish out of water protagonist. Yeah.
Right. But they have a good reason for that, which is Gojo is his teacher, and Gojo never explains anything to anybody until it's relevant.
Yeah, he kind of does whatever he wants.
Even though he's the best and he's excellent, he's also sort of a terrible teacher.
He's
a great teacher. He just is kind of a jerk about it sometimes.
Yeah.
He just actively flaunts hierarchy.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, his disrespect for superiors.
Mwah.
It's offensive.
Well, let's be fair. He has no superior.
Well, I was gonna say though, but it's offensive even in like an American context. Like that's how flagrant it is, and let alone a Japanese context where I can't even believe they let them.
Right.
Like,
I can't believe they let the salacious material
honestly,
bend.
like some cursing in Japanese is basically just not using someone's proper title. Like,
Yeah, true.
They are a very polite society, and Gojo is just like that he's a likable character.
The fact that he's likable, but he also reads as someone who flaunts all that in English to Americans shows how much.
I think it's because it's a subversion of that hierarchy in just the right way that we always think of. When we explore Japanese culture hierarchies and stuff, there's so much of it that as Americans we look at and go, why are you doing this? This guy's a jerk. Why would you like act this way? Why would you have respect for him? And in a Japanese context, I mean, we as weebs understand like that's the way the culture works. You have to do it that way. You need to save face. You're going to lose your honor, whatever. But like from an American perspective, it doesn't make any sense. Gojo comes in there and he's like, you're right. It doesn't make any sense because I don't have to listen to you because you can't touch me.
Literally because of his power, he can't be hit.
And I don't know. I've only seen the first season of the anime and the movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is going somewhere, but it's almost kind of creepy in that I don't fully trust Gojo.
Oh, there's definitely a point to that. I don't think we've actually talked about this a whole lot, but it's something that's always been in the back of my mind because, so first of all, he's always wearing a blindfold except for very specific points, which is a little disconcerting in and of itself. There does seem to be a story point to that, which is like,
have you guys not learned about that yet? I can't remember what
you
learned.
He has
anime.
beautiful eyes.
He can see too much, basically.
It's Kakashi. It's Kakashi.
But the thing is
so much more.
The way that he interacts and like the fact that you can't see what he's looking at most of the time and all that gives sort of a sinister vibe to it. The way he doesn't explain anything to anybody until they need it.
No, I get such a...
There comes a point of telling everybody who's in charge that you could, like, constantly reminding everybody that you could kill them and they're basically at your mercy. And also having an agenda that you're just openly secretive about, and he won't tell anyone. He doesn't tell the kids. He's kind of manipulating the kids to some end.
Yeah.
You don't know if it's for their good or not. It's probably not good for Yuji to continue to just consume these fingers, and if he goes crazy, maybe they'll just kill him. Like, Gojo's not a great guy. I like him.
I love Gojo a lot.
As a character, I like him. As a human being, he would scare the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but he's also immensely powerful.
It definitely gives me the kind of feeling like if I was in this world, if I was having to deal with him, I would definitely like treat him with respect and like want to be his friend and like go along with him and everything. Whereas
be nowhere near him.
Where at the same time, I would always be like sort of looking behind me and like, you know, side to side, what's going on? Like, I would be waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Gojo is like like an eldritch Lovecraftian god that like you stand next to
He's
as
Q.
his pet.
He's Q
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Star Trek. He's Discord from My
Yeah.
Little Pony. He is those types of characters, and those are my favorite characters. Where it's just like you are so powerful that you just get to flaunt reality.
The only
and it's like
reason
that's what I want to be. That's what I like of just being able to just be so whatever that you can just kind of
go
futz
get
around.
yourself
And,
Isekai.
yeah.
the only reason I trust Gojo is because he hasn't already murdered everybody.
Well, no, he's literally. I've said it. Like he's at least from again. I don't remember how much that I kind of know that you guys don't, but it's like he is literally trying to remake society. That everything is too structured now, and this doesn't work. And he's trying to. He's like, I could just kill the higher ups, but it wouldn't solve my problem.
Right.
I'm teaching the youth of today to make the society.
So
he's genuinely
3
trying to make society
students
better.
at a time.
Just to
Yeah, that's what he does. That's
just to paint this
he is
picture.
there. His viewpoint is that, you know, there are the curse users and there are humans, and the curse users are there to help and protect the humans.
Right.
And there's a bunch of other people who do not share that opinion.
So just to paint this picture properly, the amount of powerful that Gojo is, he can teleport anywhere at any time. He can basically not be harmed in any way.
He's like Dr. Manhattan, right?
Yeah, to an extent. I don't think he can't like manipulate matter, but it doesn't really matter that he can't do that because he can punch things infinitely hard. He can fly. He can.
He is the man who is literally. There are 3 top clans of curse users. One of them is the Gojo clan. There's one member. It's Gojo. The other
I
families
didn't know
have.
that.
Oh, I guess I told that to Brad before you got here. The other 2 are stocked full of humans. There's the huge families that have been running for generations, and Gojo is literally so strong. He is a clan of himself, and his power stance and all of that is really important.
But you know, we've been talking about Gojo a whole lot.
Because I can't
he's,
stop.
He's very central to the plot.
Yes.
But the main character is Yuji.
Yeah.
And what we do is we follow Yuji on his journey from, you know, someone who didn't know any of this existed at the age of 17,
Yeah.
to sort of going through these stages of becoming one of the most powerful curse users.
Being a focal point of what's going on. And you get the Shonen Battler thing of there's a bunch of other students that all have their own little power sets and their own little stories going on. One of them is literally just a panda, and he's the best.
But there's one other character that we definitely have to talk about, which is Toto.
Oh gosh.
Because here's the thing, Toto is sort of everybody's favorite character. Everybody who watches Jujutsu Kaisen loves Toto.
He's such a freaking ridiculous.
But everybody in the anime hates him.
Yeah. Oh, he would be such an asshole to hang out with.
Because he's one of the strongest students, I believe, from the other school, right?
Yeah, Kyoto.
But like his thing is he's always just like, well, I'm really strong, but I want to go see what he's like obsessed with idols, and that's all he ever wants to talk about, and gets pissed off and pissy when other people aren't talking about them.
What do you like in a woman?
Yeah.
I promise you there is a socially awkward junior high schooler out there who acts exactly like this and does not get the joke.
Yeah.
I've seen so many of these characters in anime.
Like, so he's like 6.5 feet tall. He's
big and
ripped.
muscly. Yeah.
Like, he's so
very
powerful.
confident.
Like, exudes his confidence. He's so cute. He's like,
he's got big himbo energy.
right. He's just like adorable. I just like
his relationship with Yuji is adorable.
Yeah.
Yes.
So first,
everything
they
else
meet.
about him is kind of like sex predator.
Yeah, yeah.
A little bit.
Their first meeting is, hey, we're going to fight. We're like in this tournament between schools. We're going to fight. And basically within 5 minutes, they're like, hey, we're blood brothers.
Did we become
we're
best
gonna
friends?
do everything together.
Well, Yuji doesn't say that.
Toto
says that.
Hallucinates a past.
Right.
Where
He starts hallucinating that they went to middle school together and like
all
they've
these
been buddies their
specific
whole
moments.
life. It's so
and the idol
adorable.
he stalks is actually a girl that rejected him, but Yuji helped him through that time.
It's like, it's ridiculous and cute and wholesome and awful all at the same time.
It's cool and it's funny, and this is all happening during a really awesome fight.
Yeah. And then immediately after that, they have to fight a curse a demon or whatever we're calling them, and they kick its ass because they're immediately in sync. It's beautiful.
Yes, it's so good. That was the fight I was talking about, and just his power and how it interacts with other things, and just oh my gosh.
And speaking of beauty,
I just want to watch all this again.
I am going to like cut a YouTube video of him flexing and like taking his shirt off, and
I'm sure it exists
it's beautiful.
Already. No.
Beauty.
I definitely want to point this out, which is the anime is very well executed.
Yes.
The art is on point. They use the money that they're given.
It really feels like this was one of the ones that the studio bid on or something. And it was like, we're going to make a flagship out of this one.
And they did.
The voice acting is excellent.
In Japanese it is.
The humor and the tone is right on point.
The English dub, I haven't heard a ton of it, but it seems competent. I haven't watched a whole episode, so I can't really talk about that. But yeah, the voice acting is great. There's so much emotion and depth to it. The music is good. They give things time to breathe. They have these long, like establishing shots of these beautiful environments. It's so well executed. And then they released this movie that just came out,
Jujutsu Kaisen 0, which is a prequel, a canon prequel.
And the thing is, so we actually saw this in the theater the other week. It was Sakuga end to end. It's at the very beginning, it's like establishing shots. Look how beautiful this is. Isn't this amazing? And they didn't stop.
We got a movie budget, baby.
It was amazing. I can't not recommend it. Like, if you just like looking at pretty pictures, go and see this.
If you like things that are kind of spooky, go watch Jujutsu Kaisen.
I would
or read
definitely say this crosses over for the horror audience.
Yes, 100%.
I don't know if it crosses over because we've a lot of things we've recommended. I say like I'd recommend this generally to anyone, regardless of whether or not they like anime and manga.
Yeah, no. You need some familiarity to watch this.
But if you are into horror, I do think it crosses over because the curse stuff looks so cool.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess I would say, if you're just into like romantic comedies or whatever, this probably isn't for you. But I think,
or even just like general action movies, you might.
I think anybody who likes action is going to like this.
Good
but I think you need to know anime at least a little bit. I don't think this can be your first. I think it's too much.
It does rely on the shonen tropes.
Yeah, I guess it relies on you knowing what they are because it moves through it like Mach 1.
It's probably not good as your first anime, but maybe your second.
Your first anime, if you're looking to get into anime.
If you got into Demon Slayer, go to Jujutsu Kaisen next. Demon Slayer is a very good. That's a whole other topic at another time. Episode. Yes, we'll save that for then. Wet your whistle with that idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that it's something that most people would probably like if there's any inkling of liking anime at all.
Correct.
I think it's a fine entry point to anime, but you need to be aware of what you're getting into.
Right.
Like, when we saw it, there was a particular girl's mom who was she was taking her daughter to see it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we
she
did not
know
think
anything about it.
Yeah.
I don't think she loved it.
No.
Did you talk to her?
No, I didn't.
She seemed really excited.
They went to the English dub then, I think, half an hour later, but they were there at the same time we were getting tickets.
When we walked in and she was like, "Oh, that's what I'm going to see,"
I
was like,
what? Ben was beating around the bush and didn't really want to say it because we're out in public and we're like, I'm going to the anime thing.
Like
but
12 other weebs standing in line, and this was the one person we were talking to.
I think she talked to us because we were the only other clear adults in line. No, it was. She did not know what it was. She was there for her daughter.
I hope she had a good time.
I'm sure she had.
I think it's a good story that you don't need to know the
I'll
anime
put it this way.
for
I
it.
don't think she followed a single damn thing.
I bet she was entertained.
The thing is,
I would hope.
I wouldn't recommend the movie first.
You don't start with the movie.
First,
Do not
and
start with
then
the movie.
watch the movie. But the thing is that like the movie does stand on its own.
Yes.
From every standpoint, but the story. Like
you would want more resolution of like if you went into just the movie, you would probably enjoy it. You would be capable of enjoying it. It's obviously not meant to be a movie in that you don't get a resolution on almost all of the arcs in it. You only get a resolution on the main characters.
You get a lot of context for what's going on in
that said,
the main timeline, quote unquote, which is all the main timeline. It is canon.
If you watch the anime beforehand, you'll watch the movie and go, "Oh, that thing! Oh, that thing!
Oh, it's that guy.
I recognize that! Oh, I know what they're doing there."
Yeah.
There was one point where I'm going to just spoil this. There's the villain pulls out this weapon and starts using this, and I was like, "That's the weapon she uses later!" Oh my god!
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
I was going to make fun of you for being a huge nerd, but I actually said that in the theater. That's the thing she does. Why is nobody going nuts? Because I was like I'm so used to these Marvel movies where I'm in the theater and everybody, claps or whatever.
Knows all the stuff.
Yeah, and presumably we're in there with other weebs.
I mean, we're also reading.
Well, it would have been a Captain America uses Thor's hammer moment.
It was.
If it wasn't the villain. If it was the other way around.
Well, no, but now we know where she got the thing. And I was like, why is nobody else reacting to this?
Now, if we went and watched the anime for the first time, when she pulls that out, we'd be like, oh!
I was just like, leave my theater. What are you people even here for? You provided me no ambiance.
I do want to say, as the manga reader here, the manga is far beyond where the anime is, so much so that it's going to be a while. And even like I said, I haven't caught up entirely because I'm rereading some stuff to catch back up after a couple of months. The humor isn't as apparent as it is in the anime, but there's a moment, I want to say maybe over 100 chapters in, I could be wrong about that, or close to it, at least over 50, where it's they do a chapter, it's hey, we're getting an anime. And I had already watched the anime before I started reading it, and it was just oh, you have the comedy chops. You just haven't been using them because they're not present because it's a manga. The manga moves very quickly, even more so than the show, even though it hits all the same beats. The art's really nice. It does move well. I'm very excited to see things animated because it's one where it's just the manga is great and the anime just okay, it needs to move and have sound and all this, and that's when it hits its maximum thing. But if you want to know what's happening next, because there's a lot of story that's happened since the end of season 1, go pick it up. Definitely big recommend for reading it as well.
We're going to dive into this sort of really in depth when we talk about Demon Slayer in a later episode, but I think this is one where I would definitely recommend the anime over the manga, especially for someone coming into it fresh.
If you want to know, if you want to watch it, go on YouTube and look up Jujutsu Kaisen Ending 1.
Yes.
Watch that. And if you don't want to watch it, you're not going to like it.
I don't know if that's where I feel like you should watch one of the OPs and one of the endings before, as much as that one is funky.
Watch an opening and watch an ending.
Because the openings are a little bit more spooky. Give you that spooky vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, that ending is just fun. It's a good time.
Yeah. I do the pose at the end every time. It's great. I think that's it. Go read Jujutsu Kaisen. Go watch it. It's probably my favorite shonen battler of all time, at least, or I guess for right now.
It's definitely a classic of this generation.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
100%.
And you know what? If you've already watched or read Jujutsu Kaisen, you should leave a comment and tell us what you thought about it.
Detailed spoilers.
I'll know most of them, and or have all forgotten them because I've got bad brains sometimes.
That's it. Episode 5 in the bag. We did it, guys.
Hooray.
I had a great time as always. Hope you guys
slaughtered.
did too.
Yatta.
Yatta.
I gotta say, we have so much fun recording these. I really hope that everybody listening is enjoying these as well. And I really want to hear from people. So, everybody listening should subscribe, follow, like, comment, all that fun social media stuff. And also make sure to leave comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at Isekai Sensei. You can send me an email directly, isekaisenseisama@gmail.com. You can go on our YouTube channel where we simulcast these as YouTube videos, which are in stereo. And that YouTube channel is, at that time I got reincarnated as an anime podcaster. Very important. Not as long as a name. YouTube doesn't allow that long name. So, and then also there's Good Pods, which is a good sort of social podcasting platform where you can leave ratings on the episodes and comments and stuff. So definitely hit us up. We want to hear from people. So
yeah, give us your ideas.
Ben, you got things you want to plug?
Yeah, I do another podcast about books. If you want to hear me talk about that for a while, you got a little crossover appeal today. That is Words About Books on Twitter at WABpod. You can get wherever you get your podcasts. I don't have all the episodes uploaded on YouTube, but I did hear YouTube's adding RSS feed podcasts.
What?
So,
What?
Yeah.
Damn.
Somebody leaked slides from a presentation. So
That's exciting.
yeah, maybe I'll finally update on YouTube. But yeah.
If I don't have to do any work,
Yep.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
If I don't have to do anything,
ultimate.
it'll just be there. So yeah, wherever you get your podcast, Words About Books.
How's Elden Ring going?
Oh, I've almost got the ending I want. I'm going to be streaming on twitch.tv/ Words About Books.
Yes. Why do I have to tell you that?
I can't remember if it's Words About Books or WAV Pod. I'm streaming on twitch.tv/ Words About Books. I am going to be doing a story stream of Elden Ring coming up. I don't think anybody cares. I'm obviously not the only one. But
Yeah, there's like 4 people who watch those.
if you want to see me do that, I'm about to beat
Particular
it for my
bento
first
flavoring.
time. Yeah. I can do that. And I think I got it figured out. I don't quite know what an Empyrean is yet, but I think I got everything else. So
But you stream normally on Monday evenings
Stream
at
normally on
7
Monday at
with
7.
your co-host and sometimes your wife.
yeah, I mean, if you wanted the Elden Ring though, that's just me. That's like where the show is.
From the source.
The Monday stream is more regular. So
Yes.
if you've got time on Monday evenings, it's a fun time. And you can hang out there on that stream, and I'm almost always there in the chat. So
You can drop your Isekai questions. We'll answer them live on stream.
yeah. It's a fun time. Especially when Nate just yells constantly.
Which is all the time.
Andrew, you got plugs?
Hi, it's me. I'm Kermit the Grog. You can hear me on my podcast that I never update, but hey, maybe I will sometime soon, called Ramble Rousers, where either we talk about general pop culture questions on my noggin, or I interview my friends, and people that I know and work with or do stuff with. So that's a good time. You can also see some of the video stuff that I make on YouTube at my YouTube channel, Kermit the Grog. And I believe you can also follow me on Twitter at Kermit the Grog. And if you want to see if you were interested and tantalized by my ZenkaiCon panels, but you couldn't make it out there, I believe through the ZenkaiCon website, you can sign up for their streaming service and you can catch the recordings of the 3 panels I did, one of which was very prescient to this very podcast because we did a sort of preamble to it called Evolution of the Shonen Protagonist, from hero to edgelord to sweet boy, that I believe went very well. So if you want to check that out, or any of the other panels that I did or anybody did in those particular rooms at ZenkaiCon, go check out their website and go from there.
Yeah, and that's ZenkaiCon, which is lots of Ks.
Yes.
ZenkaiCon.com/ZenkaiCon-online. Of course, if you just go to ZenkaiCon.com, you can find the online section there. It is $15 to get access. You get a year of access for that $15, and you can watch every single panel that was recorded.
Yeah. Had some buddies do some really good panels too.
Yeah. And our friends, Keeping Friendship Magic, did a couple panels. You can check those out as well.
Correct. A very good panel about how dark actually the world of Pokemon is. That one was a really good one. I got to sit on that. And also our buddies over at Plus 2 Comedy, my friend Noah, who I usually stream with during the week, who joined me for my video game commercials panel, did one on ARGs that was really good that I got to see. So
Nice.
That's another one that's definitely worth checking out.
I hate ARGs.
Oh, I love them. I love ARGs.
A conversation for another time.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah, I'm talking to you. You know, you made it to the end of the podcast. Thanks so much for giving us your support by listening. You know, since you've made it this far, that means you're a loyal listener. And we appreciate loyalty. In fact, we appreciate it so much that we want to show you just how much we appreciate it. I have here a list of games, and I'm going to start giving away those games. So if you leave us a comment about this episode within the 2 weeks after this comes out on Good Pods, YouTube, or Twitter, you could be chosen to receive a game of your choice from this list. If we have a lot of comments, we'll pick up to 3 people per episode based on how much we like your comment. So don't forget to comment right away. And if you're hearing this after the time is up, make sure you subscribe so that you can get in on the next giveaway. So once again, thanks for listening. And if you find yourself in another world, don't forget the formula.